Well, hello everyone and welcome to ADMG 374. Let's talk about cost management, chapter 7 from the textbook. So when we're talking about cost management, we are talking about the triple constraint. So remember, the triple constraint is scope, budget or cost, schedule or time. Okay, so we talk about triple constraint as scope, budget, time. Scope, cost, schedule, however you want to look at it. Think budget and cost equals the same thing, schedule time equals the same thing. Okay, so we started talking about scope management in chapter 5. We talked schedule management in chapter 6, and now we're on to budget management or cost management in chapter 7. Now this is a great visual about just how one can throw the whole project out of balance, and this is why we really focus hard on managing the triple constraint. So back to our Project Management Institute PMBOK processes. Remember that we always have processes, and our processes always start with determining or planning how we're going to manage cost. And every one of our processes that we talk about, the very first one is always going to start with planning. Just a good one to know. So this week our processes for cost management, we're going to plan exactly how we're going to do this, meaning we're going to determine our policies and procedures and our documentation that we're going to pull together. And the reason we do planning on this is because every project is going to be a little bit different, and we may have different policies, procedures, or documentation depending on the project. Also, organizations may be very specific in how they want things done. So planning for some organizations may be very simple because this is how we do it, end of discussion. So you will follow the organizational policies, procedures, and documentation for cost management. But not all organizations are that pulled together to have that level of maturity in their project management processes. And in many cases, you'll actually find that you are determining these things for each different project. Okay, and remember, each project is very different. So then we go about estimating our costs. Well, we can't estimate costs unless we know what tasks and what resources we're going to need. And remember, back in scope and schedule, that's where we're all about determining what we're going to do and then breaking that down, decomposing what we're going to do into work packages or tasks, activities that we can then determine how long, and in time management we were worried about how long the activities would take, right? Well, now we're worried about what are the resources that are going to be needed to complete those tasks, and how those are, what are they going to cost us. Okay, so we determine our budget. We allocate the overall cost estimate to individual work items to establish a baseline. And then we worry about controlling costs so that we keep that triple constraint in check. So what is project cost management? Well, first of all, let's identify what a cost is. And a cost is any resource that is sacrificed or foregone to achieve a specific objective or something given up in exchange. Now that sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, typically we measure costs in terms of dollars. That's the easiest way that we can measure costs. And that's most likely what you'll see when we're talking about costs. We're talking about dollars. When we're talking about people costs, usually there is an hourly rate associated with that individual, so that we can say if we have somebody working on our project for 85 hours and we're going to cost them out at $20 an hour, that's 85 times 20 is the cost for that resource in our project. Okay? Now, let's talk about the whole sacrifice thing. So if I am busy working on, I work for your organization and I make $20 an hour, and I have a task. I have a normal job. I have a regular job that I do, and I come in every day and I do this work, and then I go home every night. Well, you've asked me to come work on your project, and you're going to need me for 85 hours, just a little more than 2 weeks to work on your project. Well, if I'm working on your project, I'm not doing my job, right? So it's most likely someone else will need to step in to do my job. Maybe they'll need to hire a temporary person. Maybe they'll need to figure out how, maybe they'll have to pay somebody else overtime to do my work while I'm working on your project. Either way, there is a sacrifice that's being made so that I can work on your project and work and my work that I would normally be doing isn't being done, or we have to pay someone extra to do. Okay, so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about sacrifice here. Okay, it's important to understand that. Project cost management includes all of the processes required to ensure that the project is completed on time and under the approved budget. So estimating costs, one of the biggest problems project managers have is they just don't do cost estimating very accurately. And it's every bit as important to get that cost estimate done as accurately as possible. If you overestimate, it is obviously it's just as bad if you overestimate as it is if you underestimate. So first of all, if you underestimate, well, that means that you're going to end up going back later at some point in time and ask for more money, and that's always a bad thing to have to do. But here's the other problem on the other side of the coin. If you overestimate by too much, what you end up doing is you are telling the organization that here's some resources that we're going to need, and I'm going to need these resources. I need you to set them aside for me so that they are available when I need them. Well, if the organization is doing that, then these resources are not necessarily available for other projects or for other work. And when we overestimate, either in resources or in money, maybe you've said it's going to take you $300,000 to do a project and it really only takes you $150,000. Well, the organization has set aside $150,000 more than they needed to, money that could have been used doing something else. So it is every bit as bad to grossly overestimate as it is to underestimate, because both of those situations are bad and we don't want to do that. So one of the things project managers really need to do is they need to take estimating very seriously. They need to really, estimating is one of the hardest things to do because you've got to dig and dig and dig, and it really takes a lot of effort in uncovering so that you are very clear on the tasks that need to be done and the people and resources that you need. It's important to know the types of cost estimates and how to prepare cost estimates and what are some of the typical problems associated with cost estimating. So some of the things that I suggest you take a look at, page 284 through 289 in version 7 and 275, 279 version 8 of the textbook provides some really good detailed examples of creating cost estimates for a case study project called the Surveyor Pro project. So I would be really take some time to become somewhat familiar with those different forms of estimating. And then what does a cost budget mean, and how do we track the project budget? Take a good look at figure 7-4 because it shows you the project's cost over time. I'm going to talk about project cost over time in a minute. But cost budgeting involves allocating the project cost estimates to individual work over time. Hang on to that. I'm going to show you some examples. And then understand what a project baseline is and when does a project baseline change. Once we have determined the scope of work, once we have decomposed the scope of work into work packages and then individual tasks and activities. Once we have assigned resources to all of our tasks and activities, and once we are 100% sure we have a good schedule, right? And we do all of this in Microsoft Project, remarkably. And once we've determined we have a good schedule and our sponsors have approved our schedule, then what we do is we baseline that schedule. We set it as a point in time and we say, all right, as of this point in time, This is when we're going to get work done. This is what work we're going to do when, and what resources we're going to use, and how much it's going to cost. Well, we use a project baseline then to report project performance at different points in time along and throughout the project. Well, we compare it back to the baseline. That's earned value management. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes as well. Now, that allocating cost over time, here's that Surveyor Pro project. Now, notice up at the top, we're talking about a 12-month project. And notice that each month, month 1 through 12, you'll notice that there are accumulative dollar amounts for each of the for each of the tasks for each month. And you'll notice that at the end of month 1, we expected to spend $20,000. And most of the work that we were doing was in the project management. Because what are we doing in the early phases? We're initiating the project and we're planning the project, right? So we're doing all of that in the early phases. So then in month number 2, we're doing more software development work. So now we've got $60,000 we're spending in software development. So in the second month, we were at $86,000. In the third month, we're at $92,000 total. And then month 4, now we're really starting to get moving with the project, right? Now we're spending $172,000 in month 4. So if you add up those 4, at the end of month 4, we've spent $370,081 in the project over time. Now take a look all the way over to the right. Our total project estimate is $1,521,240 for the whole project, right? But at the end of month 4, we've actually spent $370,081. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about allocating costs over time. We don't take that $1.5 million and allocate it right up in month 1 and say, here you go, here's $1.5 million, do with it, you know, what you said you would do. We allocate costs over time, okay? Earned value management is a performance tool that we use, and we use it with the scope, time, and cost data and our original baseline, okay, our original baseline. And what we do there is we look and determine how well our project is doing in terms of meeting work completion and cost estimate, money we've spent based on what we said we would do versus what we actually did, okay? I have a great video for you on earned value management coming up. And additionally, some things that you should know about earned value management is look at those formulas that are on table 7-5 and what are some of the rules of thumb for earned value management. Definitely get out here and watch this EVM video. I forget if it's 10 minutes or 16 minutes. I forget. Great video. It walks you through earned value management, all of those formulas, by looking at a lawn cutting example, how we're gonna cut the lawn. But basically, we're looking at two things. We're looking to determine how much work we said we would do, how much work have we actually completed, how much money did we say we would spend, how much money have we actually spent at a particular point in time. We compare it to our baseline, and then we look at that point in time, and then we say, are we on schedule? Are we going to be late finishing? Are we going to be early finishing? Are we on budget? Are we over budget, or are we under budget? The earned value management formulas, using that data, will help us determine that. Okay. I also put together another video on resource allocation, and this is a walkthrough on how to assign resources, how to go through and do that. And I encourage you guys, watch the earned value management and watch the resource allocation video. because they'll be really helpful to you in understanding some of these concepts. And of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask during class. I'm always happy to help you. All right, take care. I hope this has been helpful to you.